Good morning. My name is Magalaki. I represent ABB, and it's my honor to moderate today's panel. I invite on stage Jabara, Executive Director and Chief Technological Advisor, Fanuc Company. Please take your place at the podium. Mikhail Ivanov, Director of Machine Building Department and Investment Engineering from Ministry of Industry and Commerce, Russian Federation. Bruno Schneckerberger, President, Yaskava Robotics Division Europe, and Vice Chairman of Supply Committee, IFOM. Jonas Glimden, Chief Executive Director, KUKA Nordic. Maxim Zverkov, CEO of Baji Robotics System. He will join us a little bit later. Ravil Hisamuddina, Director of Technological Center, Deputy Director on Development, KAMAZ Robotics. And Alexander Kamyshnikov, founder and co-owner of Quantum Space Company. He will speak from the first row. Let me, in the beginning, to tell you about the issues that we are going to discuss today to set some frame for our future discussion. We plan to discuss international division of labor, localization in Russian Federation. We will also discuss the need to improve labor productivity, particularly looking for the areas where quick success is possible, creation of new production environment, how machines and humans can work together, whether both are ready for this. What slows down the introduction of industrial robotics and digital technologies and commoditization of component base, which may reduce the cost of equipment, whether this trend is applicable to robotics. These are the key issues which we are going to discuss. We'll talk about them in greater detail, and we will give an opportunity to our speakers to express their opinion on those issues. And now, in the beginning, I wanted to give the floor to Mr. Bruno Schneckerberger, and he will make a presentation about the robotics market state.
Good afternoon, everybody. So this was a late change, so the presentation, I think I've only been given 10 minutes, so we'll shorten this presentation, but we thought it would be a good idea to give you an overview about the robotics market as we've seen it today. So just quickly talk about the size of the robotic markets. The total robotic markets globally has a size of 50 billion US dollars, so that's a substantial increase of 25% over prior year. Just talk about very briefly about IFR. It has 50 members. Most robot associations are members of the IFR, such as the Russian Robot Association, and then suppliers, R&D institutions, and as well as integrators, but obviously there are many indirect members through to the respective association of the respective country. So talk about the really record growth of the industry in the last year. You see the number of robots being newly brought into the market over the last 10 years or so, and you see the tremendous increase in this last year, an increase of 93,000 units over prior year. So really record, about 30% increase over prior, and the highest since 2010. This is the breakdown of the individual industries. Automotive still be the largest one in numbers, then followed by electronics, and then also metal catching up with the highest percentage increase of over 50%. This gives you the breakdown of the regions, and you see that it's really dominated by Asia, with over 70% in Asia, then Europe, and then America. And you see also the growth of Asia has been the most significant one, then followed also by significant growth in Europe and as well as in the Americas. This gives you, just talking about China, the really impressive numbers of China. 58% growth in China this last year, and a large increase of the global increase has actually been coming out of China. Let the translators catch up a little bit. Well, this is the estimated worldwide energy supply of industrial robots at the year end. As you see in China, growing 58%. Japan has also an impressive growth, as well as Korea, United States, and Germany. These are the 5 biggest robot user countries, representing about 3/4 of the total global demand of robots. And then there's the follow-up countries. Now Vietnam is in the 7th largest, huge increase. The same thing in Italy, good recovery, Mexico, France. I think some of that is very much automotive driven, but like for instance, France is also a very diverse industry that has driven this growth in a more mature country. So I think that's an interesting development there. Eastern Europe, that includes Russian Federation, also a really impressive growth, kind of keeping up in the world growth market with 36%. And if you look at the more details where the growth has been coming from, here you see the 5 countries with the biggest number, heading up by Czech Republic, Hungary, Poland, Slovakia, Russia, and Romania. And much of this is automotive driven in specific investment in those countries. And I think I want just to compliment on the great numbers for Russia. Obviously, from a percentage increase, it's really fantastic, 98%. I think if you keep this up a couple of years, you're really there, right in the top countries. And here you see the growth of Russia over the years, and it's been kind of not steady, but this number of last year has been the highest absolute number ever in the country. So I think it's really, really great development. So this is more the details on Russia and what applications those robots were going. And you see welding being the number 1. And you see also a lot of is unspecified. I think that's probably the year-over-year change is probably representative that there was a high number of unspecified. But it's basically welding, it's handling, and then it's others. And if you look at what industries are using, I think it's automotive, maybe not surprisingly. And then I think the real nice development, I think that's really where investment will happen. I'm sure we'll talk about this later on, is really in education and institutes. So really nice number. This is basically all non-manufacturing, would assume to go mostly in the data area. This is just showing the world average, basically the robot density per 10,000 people in industry. This is actually showing 2016 numbers, so not updated for 2017. But you see there that headed up by Korea, Singapore, Japan, Germany, I think interesting countries. And then if you look at the second page, actually you still see China being the second page. Well, this is not including the numbers, the significant growth from last year. So if we would include that, I'm sure China would be coming to the first page and be I think a robot density of roughly 100 by now. Yeah. So I think talk about Russia, let me just skip over this one. I think there's what are the really challenges for global industries, robotic industry today. And one is really simplification. I think that's particularly critical for small and medium enterprises. Make it really easier to use robots. I think it's robot collaboration. I mean, humans working with robots. And it's digitization, big data analysis, allowing to make, couple basically vision and sensing technology and artificial intelligence with robot, give the robot a wider use, and with that give it a better return of your investment. Okay. So that's all I want to do. I think I had my 10 minutes. I'm not sure I kept it, but I think it was maybe good to share some of these numbers with you as an entry in our discussion. So thank you.
Большое спасибо, Бруно.
Thanks a lot, Bruno. If possible, If possible, I wanted to ask you a question right away as a moderator. First of all, thank you to be so quick, so densely to show us the trends in the market. But I wanted to ask you about the key differences between the global trends and the Russian market. What are the reasons for the differences in Russia over the past years? Automotive production, automotive assembly production at least, was developing, growing pretty quickly. The capacity of automotive industry is pretty high. I did not prepare especially, but I believe it's about 3 million. And the capacity, production capacity of cars and trucks in Russia. However, the capacity is underutilized significantly. Here we are comparing the Russian automotive industry. It's quite comparable with other significant global markets. At the same time, the number of robots which are used in the industry are much smaller. Can you give any comments to this? Я думаю, что это вопрос к остальным участникам нашей.
It's probably part of some political situation that might have limited installment in the past. And it's maybe also available of some integrators being present in this country to enable real more robotization in the country. But I think, as you've seen from last year, I think it's a really good start with a 98% growth over robots over prior year, and I think most of that we have seen actually going automotive. So I think it's really going forward. I believe this will continue.
Спасибо.
Thank you. In that case, with your permission, let us move on. In our program. We plan to organize it in that way, in the following sequence. Now we wanted to give the floor to Michael Ivanov, Director of Engineering Department from the Ministry of Industry and Commerce. And it is quite important that from the position of the states and the strategy of development of the engineering complex in particular, to hear it from the source, because Michael and his department is responsible for that. Thank you. I wanted to tell you that, to my mind, it's quite symbolic that today our 9th Innoprom is organized in Yekaterinburg and the partner country is South Korea. As Bruno told us, these wonderful numbers that Korea ranks first in terms of the density of installed industrial robots per 10,000 of population. And it was quite correctly said in the beginning, the topic of our roundtable discussion, that by all means the state does understand today that robotics is one of the main and probably the most important trends of the new industrial revolution, Industry 4.0. You know that our national technological initiative, which was improved several years ago, we have the program Digital Economy, and the state today starts to systematize the concepts, systematize the approaches to our work with the digital future in Russia. Of course, the situation in this industry today requires further development, because, in fact, the industry is represented by a number of companies which are today specialized in engineering and provide services in programming of the existing robots, because we do not have today the full-scale manufacturers. They are all presented in the form of startups, which we are trying to support. Therefore, we need to share the experience with our international partners. We organized this information exchange with the largest manufacturers, including the representatives of some of the companies present today in this audience. By all means, this is one of the key components in this development route. I wanted to add a few numbers to what Bruno has just mentioned and demonstrated the statistics of the international robotics markets. Today, the pool of industrial robots in Russia is about 8,000 units. At the same time, in the world, it's over 1.5 million. You see the giant tempo with which it grows, including in China. You must understand that in countries like China, Korea, Japan, who are the leaders in this production and the use of robotics, they have their own specifics. They are expert-oriented economies like Japan, for instance, and the lack of the territory and inability to build large production complexes and life forces them to move towards more flexible production. When production lines are completely automated, and hence once every half year they have to renovate their production line. For instance, the TV sets which the Japanese market is uses today, new models are offered with a periodicity from several months to half a year. And this is a difficult task which requires in itself the application of large-scale automatization and robotics. And China, which has 138,000 units per annum, but their population is very great, and in terms of density of robotics, they're even lower than the average global level. But I believe that pretty soon they will gain the global trends because this industry is developing very quickly. In Russia, as I've mentioned before, we today have a number of integrators who already learned how to work with robots manufactured by different suppliers. We are very happy to have joint projects with global manufacturers who are going to open their engineering centers in Skolkovo, for instance, which will become another important driver of this trend in Russia. Today, we have integrator companies which learned how to develop the program software part of automatization means, and they have the relevant competences. These are 20-30% of the general intellectual contribution to the project, automatization project. In addition to industrial robotics, we have service robots, and the government pays a lot of attention to that area as well. One of our startups is Promobot. Probably you've heard about it, and they supply service robots. Recently, they have signed a large contract to supply robots to the USA. These are also the growth points on which we are basing today, and we involve those mechanisms which the government provided in strategic documents. We are going to develop this. You know that in National Technological Initiative, we have a number of roadmaps which are meant, the events which are listed there need to prepare the Russian economy towards the markets of the future, the markets of new technologies. And this applies to aerospace, automotive industry, and many, many others. And there is one very important technological map which goes in parallel with all those roadmaps. It's TechNet, and as part of this TechNet program, we are going to build the so-called factories of the future, where we are going to apply all the existing technologies of the future, including digitalization of production, creation of digital counterparts, and all those breakthrough technologies, part of which can be seen already in today's exhibition. not far from the stand of our Ministry of Industry and Commerce. We have opened a unique exposition which is focused on additive machines. These are not just exhibits, they are mass production units, and this area is one of the pillars on which the Industry 4.0 is going to develop and the future of digital industry. From the point of view of government approach, we have performed a large study in the beginning of this year. We have evaluated the readiness of the companies to the process of digitalization and automation of production. This is directly related to those topics which were outlined by Michael. This is International Division of Labor and involvement of the Russian companies in global cost change and creation of added value. This is improvement of labor productivity and efficiency of production. And we tried to use the acquired data to prepare the new mechanism for stimulation of the market for introduction of automatization and robotics techniques. Recently, we have developed a new program of the Industry Development Fund. The name is Digitalization of Industry, which is going to provide opportunities to the companies to obtain soft loans to implement their industry production digitalization projects, to automate their technological production line or production facilities in general. And we believe that this mechanism must become a driver, drive the demand for these technologies inside the country. And that question which you asked before, Michael, why the production volumes in our automotive industry are growing and demonstrates good dynamics, but at the same time the volume of robotics use in the industry is not that high. I believe that part of the answer is that it is impossible simply to transfer robots to any production line. To substitute robots for humans, this task is non-trivial. It requires review of production processes, digitalization of models of all stages of life cycle of production. And this integrated mechanism is going to be provided or offered by the state for the companies using soft loans to be greatly involved in modernization of their production, improving productivity, reducing costs, and getting all those benefits which are offered by automation and digital industry in general. Therefore, the government and the Ministry of Industry and Commerce is looking at this area of robotics as one of the most promising from the point of view of new production, new technologies, which today will be developing in the country. And I may say that one of the growth drivers will probably be the development of such industries as instruments, radio, electronics, and the task which we are facing today will make us pay more attention to localization of mass-scale production. Mass-scale production of similar elements in those areas where it is necessary to use robotics to improve production volumes, to improve efficiency of production. In general, the future is more than positive, and I do hope that the events like this, our contacts, our partnerships, new partners which we find in the course of such events will help us in this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mikhail. Especially thank you for the last very hopeful expression that the future is more than positive. We will hope for that and will wait for this more than positive future. You answered by your contribution the answer that I prepared, how the state will help the implementation. You essentially answered this, but in doing so, you touched upon what traditionally requires state, which renders assistance. When the state renders assistance, it requires localization. And the theme of localization in robotics has been many times discussed for many years, discussing that the robots must localize to localize. Then they understood that maybe this is not feasible. My personal opinion is that integration maybe should develop, but since you are a representative of the state, you are creating the rules of the game for us as equipment manufacturers. We need to understand what's happening tomorrow in order to get this state assistance. We understand that it will require some localization. What is your vision? When should be localized and what? What should be localized? Exactly. In fact, we rely on the fact that import substitution or localization must not be for localization's sake. It must be a well-thought process, and localize in Russia non-economical operations is not the way that we should follow. I think we will not be equal in terms of production volume of individual microchips which are manufactured in China for the entire world. And do we need to localize that in Russia? I think that we must look for niches that are in demand first in terms of demand. Second is the economics of the projects. And the state currently offers a whole range of frameworks. Industrial policy covers all phases of industrial product pipeline, including development, localization of operational capacity, bringing onto the market. We are looking more and more at access to export markets, international markets. We have relevant tasks set forth by the President. Therefore, our partners and investors, we tell them that let us not look locally at only the Russian market. We also have a market, first of all, of our nearest neighbors. There are third-party countries' markets. When technological investment comes to Russia to localize their products and create the products that are in demand. For the third countries, this model has already been developed within the Russian Federation. Therefore, I don't think we should restrict ourselves to the indicators that we have in Russia. It turns out like a vicious circle that we as the state must resolve. That means there is no tool today to support automation because there are no localized industrial robots, and there are no industrial robots because the demand is low, and it is the state that can stimulate the demand. So that's the bottleneck. But the digital development of industry will provide favorable terms of loan, even though localization means will be imported, but we will grant much more credit conditions for those who will use Russian content. We believe this position will make it possible for us to kill two hares with one shot, as we say in Russia, to pump up the demand and stimulate the process of localization of the components that will be demanded by the market and whose localization will make it possible to implement relevant projects. Thank you very much for your contribution.
И очень для нас обнадеживающий. С вашего позволения.
Very detailed and very hopeful. I will switch to the next speaker, and then we will probably return with additional questions to the ministry, because it is extremely important for us. Since our panel is attended by one customer only, I think it would be logical to ask Mr. Verkhizamudinov, Deputy Director of Development for Kamaz plant, to invite him to share his looks, his opinions, his favors, what hinders growth of increase of usage of robots, not in the main process, but in auxiliary ones, and your expectations from the customer. How can we satisfy your needs? Thank you for the opportunity. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I would like not only to tell you, but also to show something, to demonstrate in this presentation. I will try to cover it quite briefly, but the essence must be there, must be heard and must be seen. We know global trends, we're not speaking about them, but the programs that have been adopted by several countries, we need to speak about them, because all successful programs are, even the countries managed to implement them successfully by governmental state, that's a fact. And each state can be described in, we also have digital economy, but it's clear that we are only getting started moving towards that direction. This is where robotization takes its decent place. And that's a very important discipline, where you must pay special attention. It's not cheap, it's fairly costly activity. I would like to speak very briefly about ideology of operations robotization, because this is what determines the desire of business to participate in it or refusing this idea. If we list 6 principles, if we adopt that is a combined system of principles, robotization is inevitable. Business has always aspired for highest performance. This was the main engine of the process. We need productivity, not the robots themselves. We don't need robots. As such, we need effective production relations. Total automation, robotization is commonly understood, and nobody is going to be scared. Robotized technologies is technologies. We need not replace a worker at a machine by a robot. To speak about new robotized technology, it's absolutely different thing. Thus, in the combat between the worker and the robot, the worker will always win. We're not speaking about this. We're speaking about new technologies, new robotized technologies, which will make it possible to get the highest output. The labor capacity of population, as they say, business will only be saved by robots. I think in the next years we'll get convinced. The Industry 4.0 is the initiative of Germany, but we are moving toward the same direction, understanding that in future the robot community will be created. We need to recognize that this is not fantastic, this is reality. And robots will inevitably accompany people no matter what scenario. Robots will be there. It's commonly known and commonly acknowledged, and the technology itself. The ideology says that we must not be late in this in case we want to have a powerful economy in our country. We must walk in step with this trend. I will only show you one picture. It's very visual. On the left, something like a new tree, but it's not a happy tree. If you look closer, you will see that in the next 10 to 15 years, we will not have an extra amount of labor, of working hands. If we speak about the natural decrease, we are in desperate need for working class, and there are not sufficient for our industry development. The whole tendency in Russia is that by the 30th of the century we're going to decrease. I mean, and people are getting older, and the robotization in some cases, the worker wins, but not in the complex. Robotized technologies, they will lead to efficient use. Our market is only starting to develop. We may not say the word digit, they're also well known, but it's investment shortage, upgrading of heavy machinery. We have standards that are in the bud, and specialists who we may not boast, he will aspire to apply it where it is more demanded. And if we open on the internet or request robot purchase, we will see pictures like this. Please note which companies and how many years this equipment has been standing around. All companies put their hands to it. This is a result of violation of all principles. Means they sold it, they pushed it, they forgot it. The vendor must offer, not the robots, but the logical sphere. What do we see? What are the ways to implementation and trends for development of robotization? These are the 4 principles. If we do not comply with them, we will not see success. Accessibility. Any implementation must use the project approach. The approach must be implemented where it is simpler. We need to implement it where it is needed. Important things that I want to say, that robotization is not a purpose in itself. It's an increase of efficiency. There are levels of control which is relevant for major companies, and if control levels from senior executive and down to the action party have not been constructed logically and do not work in an integrated manner, you cannot expect success. We are applying these phases, preliminary research of the area or production facility where we need to implement it. We study, develop a technology, we develop a project, we implement it, we aspire to standardize it, and it works in the end. We have several successful projects with different companies KUKA, Fanuc, ABB. We can keep listing them, but I would like to say integrators may get offended, but unfortunately all these projects were won by Western integrators. We need a strong integrator in our country. Without them, implementation is either impossible or very expensive, although in this context the Western ones were cheaper than ours. And I would like to notice several trends. Development of cyber security. We understand it is needed economical calculation. We traditionally, from the high inflation time, keep counting as we did all these years, about 20 or 25 years. And as a rule, the robotization projects lose against these conditions. We need different approaches, different methodology, plus participation of state, integration of robotized solutions in standards of operating system, impossible without participation of the state. The cutting through education system, we can solve it by showing an example of how we try to do it, involving a university, a secondary school, and an integrator with a direct user. But not all industrial enterprises in Russia have an opportunity to bring together such a volume, to implement such important projects. That is, the training program from kindergarten to high school, they must be throughput with our future tasks. By the way, today, a 3-year-old boy or girl, we must tell them what is happening in 15 years. And creation of intellectual base of successful technology solutions that will be there when the previous 4 trends are implemented. The day before tomorrow, I read the state program of South Korea. They are planning in the next years to implement 10, to create 10 or 15 special centers across the country, and will assist development of robotized solutions at the enterprises. As a conclusion, I would like to say that we are expecting assistance from the state, not as subsidies only, but also in terms of overall training programs and personnel training in terms of cyber safety. I think it's a creation of the industrial base of successful technical solutions. And we understand that robotization is a driver virtually for economic development. Therefore, we need to pay the closest attention to that. Thank you. Thank you, Levin. Don't leave. I have a question. You have shown us a sad picture, which largely, and what we discussed in the course of preparation of this session, this, of course, is your dissatisfaction regarding the opportunities for integrations and capacity of Russian integrators. In doing so, how do you see, which is, this is a certain vacuum which is undoubtedly to be filled. It can be filled either by integrators getting better, pursuant to expectations from largest consumers like you are, or the equipment must be integrated directly, or the participants, the largest ones, such as major Russian companies, which can make certain integration. So which of these scenarios you see as most probable? I think the most optimal is that when manufacturers of robotics unite in the test mode, and we see that on these successful projects that have been executed in our integrators. Why the opinion was not quite positive? Because in the past 5 years there was only 2 integrators of us involved. One decided to solve the first task, and the other one in 4 years, let's say, has never fulfilled the task and left it where it was. When integrators come to talk to us, I ask them first questions. Do you have technologists in your pocket? Of course, we're not speaking about this specific one. When Western integrators come, I do not ask this question because the Western technology is there. When once again, I will repeat myself, we are not waiting to robots, we are waiting for effective technology solution implemented through robots. As far as I know, among the leaders, the company KUKA decided to unite several of their plants in order to make it easier and simpler to solve the tasks, because the winners of contests were representatives of KUKA. I don't remember. If not, then if this is so, then the way it works. Thank you very much. But I think it was a very interesting vector for our further discussion in particular. Thank you, Ravil. And in terms of these pictures that we have just seen, I would like to invite Maxim Zverkov, CEO of Abage Robotics System, also to comment on this, because you essentially have created the most interesting startup, which offers solutions, not only process solutions, but also in terms of integration of robots into Russian plants, which should allow not only large but medium-sized enterprises, but you had to encounter what actually happens to the plants which have purchased robots were unable to integrate. Would you please comment? Well, I will correct you. We're not only looking at the Russian market, but we started in Russia, and the idea was invented in Russia. And I will go back to Mikhail Igorovich, who spoke about the problem of robotics implementation in Russia. We do not produce much of mass thing. We do not have the demand for mass scale. When we started looking at that, we understood that we must look at robots differently. And we understood what is the robot's main restriction. They are too complex at the moment. They are complex, they are expensive. If we summarize your claims, and we looked at them differently. We decided that the main challenge of robotics overall, if we look in terms of global, if we look at robot is, apologize for being straightforward, it's stupid. It's strong, but it's stupid. If you give it flexibility, adaptivity as human, and give it an opportunity to perceive the task closer to human, it will become much more efficient. Respectively, the product that is required for the customer, it will be cheaper because you can do many parts, many items on one piece of equipment. And the technological restrictions of robots is the need to program for each action, for each change, very strictly programming. So we see for Russia, I believe these solutions will be in demand for Russia. This solution, which will make it possible only having an AutoCAD file, loading it into smart system or into some brain to program the robots on the go. or remove programming as such from the process technology. This will make it possible to make equipment simpler for end customer and cheaper. Because if we remove programming from the process, but make it possible for a robot to be closer to human, to adapt to all kinds of changes. This makes it possible for us to go from mass market to series project, in fact, to unique market. We have relied on this ideology and are very actively developing. We went to KAMAZ, we proposed some things, and I think our approach, when the system essentially becomes simpler and through cancellation of the technology barrier in terms of programming, we make it simpler. People can produce different items on one robotics facility, which will make it possible for us to create a new market, as we can say that implementation of robotics is not feasible. We need all those preparational activities and materials. All of this is very much restricted for implementation. And if we speak roughly, in cars and electronics is there, but not anywhere else. We need to adjust it. And back to a question. For Russian plants, I'm not saying the names. We have been a lot. And I see this sad picture that idling robotics facilities, centers that do not produce the amount of product that the customer would be happy with. In particular, we in Abaji see the main restriction for market development is first and foremost the technology. I think it will resolve the state opportunity to have many robots, many more robots, and enhance this 74 robots by 1,000 workers. This figure is 40 or 50 years that robots were invented, and less than 1% of industrial robots was working. So we need a next jump in technology. Like that, in technology or the market, or in certain financial incentive matter. Market is very simple. I don't see the need for financial stimulations. In case technology goes to the new level, dozens of times higher efficiency, then the market will be able to buy it and will want to buy it. But now our proposals, that offers that we've made, I hope that KAMAZ will somehow consider. Our offer is with a small series. Imagine you have hundreds of different items manufactured, and now solving this task using a console or a remote is inefficient now. It's not profitable because you need to program for everything. But if you have production, preparatory production, God forbid, so this matrix of exceptions, or you write a matrix to switch to the next level using software. That's what we are doing. And I think this will create new, and financial measures will not be much required. But of course, they are not bad. When you spoke about technologies, the technologies that are used in Russian plants, they are virtually the same. And I think that the way KAMAZ manufactures their trucks or other equipment is basically following the same technologies they manufacture in many other countries. So the difference of technology is the principle if you speak about technology of manufacturing of the end product. I don't see that. If you speak that we have hit the ceiling, then please explain we're hitting the ceiling in terms of global industrial robot market or Russian market, because Previously, we have discussed the Russian market issues, but the technology in the Russian market are similar. Similar, of course, but let us speak about global market. I think that global market 40 or 50 years ago, the industrial manipulator was invented. It is more favorable, it's more economic than a person, it's more precise, it's faster, you don't have to feed it or pay taxes, and people on the conveyor are doing more decent things. But then why implementation, not in Russia, but I stress it, in global industry, in all industries, only 74 robots for 10,000 workers? So there's something wrong, not in the market, but in the process approach, if you look at the global figures. And our vision is that the process vendors, integrators, all together, we as robotics market players cannot offer solutions for virtually unique things, like to resolve the operation of final process welding of a product assembled by humans. At this point, there's a certain challenge for robotics. If we solve it, the global market is growing fast. Thank you very much. I would like to ask many more questions to Maxim, but since we need to follow the agenda, I want to move on to vendors. What Ravel spoke as the representative of a consumer. The vendors of the equipment, there are no such claims or problems as integrators. And the vendors, they improve their technology in the global market. This technology of finished products, finished robots, is brought here. A robot is not expensive as the overall system, but still critical. In terms of vendors, I would like to ask such a question. Since our goal is to analyze the general trends of the global market, I would like to dwell first on the opportunities for improvement of productivity of labor in the industry through robotics, the issues of creating a new operational environment for interaction between robot and humans, maybe speak more about cobots, and the general trends where you see the further development. And would like to give the floor, if you permit, to Mr. Sukhasana Jabara, Executive Director, Chief Technology Advisor of Fanuc.
Good afternoon. My name is Jabara from Fanuc. First of all, I'd like to collaborative robot, cobot, and sorry. Regardless how much robot technology goes on, there remain a lot of areas where human is better than robot. And in such areas, human performs tasks requiring the dexterity of human hand, and robot performs work that human doesn't want to do, such as dangerous work, transfer of heavy objects, and simple repetitive tasks. And recent collaborative robots eliminate the need for any safety fences that separate human and robot from each other and make the division of labor possible. Since human and collaborative robot can work together, in their respective fields of expertise. They attract much attention globally and now rapidly being installed in factories worldwide. And next, I'd like to talk about the system integration. And I hear many times in Russia, localization. I hear localization in Russia many times. And in case of Fanuc Corporation, robots are manufactured only in Japan. And honestly speaking, the value, added value, is now shifting from components such as robot, motors, controllers, to the system, integrated system. So integrated system is now becoming very much important. So my advice, it's my advice, only my advice, you should make much of system integration in Russia. And system integrator are located between robot supplier and end users, and more close to end user. So end user speaks in Russian, so system integrator also should speak in Russian. And system integrator need very high level of technologies, such as mechanism, control, software, IoT, AI. And I know you have a very excellent software programmer, a lot of excellent mathematicians in Russia. So this is my advice. System integration is, you should more make much of system integration in Russia. Thank you.
Спасибо большое.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Sakihibara. Next, I would like to ask the same question to a representative of KUKA Nordic Company, Jonas Glimden, Chief Executive Director of KUKA Nordic.
So, listening to this, the earlier statements, I mean, there are three main reasons to automate. It's one, that you want to take away jobs that are dirty, dangerous, or dull. Or you want to increase productivity, either to add more productivity or to lower cost of products. Or you want to increase quality. And we were looking earlier on the countries or leading the automation league, so to say, and they have all been benefited from having strong industrial companies automating early. And around those has system integration been built, and then the art of automation has sort of spread over the countries. So integration is extremely important, but I think the most important thing is that companies like KAMAZ and other industrial companies in Russia start focusing on the art of automation, because it's a mindset, it's a philosophy that when you walk out on the factory floor, you think all the time, how can I improve my productivity, how can I be get more quality, or how can I increase the safety and health of my people. And I've been, since I started working here in Russia, I've been very curious about this extremely low number in robot penetration of 3 robots per 10,000 industrial workers, which is lower than Greece and lower than Croatia, for instance. And I gave myself a task to, at an event similar to this a few months ago, to ask the question to people from industry and university and also from regional government, why is this? Because I wanted to try to understand. And the takeaway I had when I left in the evening was that everybody was waiting for someone else. And mainly it was government. And I was asked back from people owning factories and said, how is it done where you live? I live in Sweden. And I said, well, if I own a factory and I think I could sell more products, if I produced more, I would look into how much does it cost to produce and make a business case. And if the business was good, I would invest in optimization and I would go. And it's interesting when you work in different markets because the dynamics is so different between Russia and Sweden, for instance. So in my view, the need for efforts is not with system integration primarily, is to help companies find areas where they could automate. And adding to that, support in system integration as a step 2. Because when you create a business around automating production, there will be money to be made for a good system integrator, and then the ball is in motion. Another input to the topic is the World Economic Forum produced a report last year looking at the 75 largest industrial countries in the world and looking into what will happen in the near future when Industry 4.0 or smart factory or whatever we call it will enter the market fully. And in that report, Russia was one of the 10 countries stated to be probably challenged by Industry 4.0 and probably losing the competitiveness on a global scale. And that would be concerning, I think, if I was in the Russian ministry. And really what they're saying is that it's difficult to go to Industry 4.0 when you're not fully on Industry 3.0 yet. So I think this is a very, it's a critical time to get these initiatives going and support companies in changing their mindset into going into full automation. Thank you.
Большое спасибо.
Thanks a lot. And I already have some questions, but let us first of all wind up this round with the suppliers, and we will wind it up in this way with the presentation of Bruno Schnackeburger, President of Yaskawa Robotics Division Europe. Same questions as we addressed all the speakers. And
a friend from KUKA here, I was equally puzzled when I came to this country the first time and I learned about the low usage of robots. And then on the other hand, the large size of industrial and how many people are actually working in industry. It really puzzled me. And to be honest, I still don't understand it quite. But I think what we heard here also from all the speakers here, I think system integrators and talent in system integrator, know-how in system integration seem to be one of the issues. I think we see really integrators are the ones that really translate automation idea into an automation solution that really bring robots to be used in a productive way, so you have a good return of the investment. And on this one, I just want to share an idea that I have actually reapplied with a different company I used to work for in a different country. But I just would like to share the idea, and then maybe to you, to the government, is this something that might be applicable here? And what we've done there, because we also were challenged with having good integrators. And what we've done, we actually asked the integrators to hire employees. Mostly were new employees. We could also use existing employees, and then we invited them to work in our factories or in our integration companies for anywhere between 6 months and 2 years. The great thing was, and we kind of co-funded this, so we paid them when they worked there because they were actually productive. But actually, we could bring our knowledge into all our integrators, right? And they actually became the best ambassador of us for the future. And maybe that could be something. I know there is immigration, there is language issues, but I think we have a will. I would certainly support it, and I think I would like to hear maybe from the others here on the panel if that would also be something that might be doable. But I think that could be really become a nucleus of bringing more know-how into Russian integrators. Yeah, and I think all the rest is also needed. I think it's great that you fund, the government funds startups. I think it's great to bring more robots in education. I think it's great to talk more about robotics in society, to take away the fear of robots, because I think the biggest risk is not, the biggest risk is really to have no automation and to lose your competitiveness, because if you lose that, then there's no jobs. So I think competitiveness creates job, competitiveness creates future, and robotics is a key enabler to stay competitive. So, thank you.
Спасибо большое.
Thanks a lot.
It seems to me that you have just touched upon one aspect regarding the question of what hinders implementation of industrial robotics. Is it payback of the projects and what is supposed to be done? And I would like to turn this question to all those vendors in the following hypothesis. When we were discussing with Revil this session, then in particular, Revil shared the following pain. If in the main process chain we can justify usage of robots, then in certain less notable productions, auxiliary production lines, and this is largely relevant to medium-sized businesses, justification of a robotics project is extremely difficult. And in this respect, it seems to me that a very painful question is the issue of assistance to the customer or the robot user on behalf of the robot manufacturer, on behalf of probably developer integrator, in terms of financial justification and joint promotion of these solutions to robotics. In which manner can this be done? Why am I focusing your attention on this? Because in my personal experience, I came from industry automation, and I know that's very easy to justify a project which is related to improvement of efficiency. If you increase output, this is a very easily justifiable project. As soon as you start speaking about enhancing quality, in what manner do we calculate or count the quality improvement or auxiliary production facilities? These projects are extremely difficult to justify. It's more difficult to go to the bank with them, while it takes the same set of documents. So which can be the active role of a manufacturer here? Please answer. Maybe we'll follow the same sequence as we did. Then I will ask Mr. Sukhasana, Executive Director and Chief Technology Advisor of Fanuc, maybe comment on the opportunities of joint case development.
As you know, now there's a lot of robots are being installed in the field of manufacturing automobiles and automobile parts, very big enterprise around the world, because the robot doesn't get tired and the quality of the product made by the robot is evaluated as being extremely stable. And but in medium and small size company, we now have a collaborative robot, and collaborative robot can work with human. And so now, as the performance cost ratio of collaborative robot increases, the bottleneck of robot introduction, you said, will decrease, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kuka?
Well, I think you have to separate cost for the solution and also the complexity, because they're equally difficult for a system integrator or customer. And usually the best way of getting a reasonable cost for a production cell or a robot cell is that you have a system integrator who knows what they're doing and they've done it before. It lowers risks, and it makes the price point of the solution right. The other part is complexity, and for small medium enterprises globally, it's not only Russia but globally, it's a challenge from a complexity point of view. There's a risk, and they're unused to that sort of equipment. And I think we, as a manufacturer right now, we're working hard to get it simpler to use and more bundled solutions to decrease the complexity and make the installation and everything simpler. And I think that's a trend all over all vendors, really.
Thank you. Jaskava?
Yeah, I also think, cost for robots has obviously gone down. Robots are today simpler to use, to apply, to program. They are more versatile to use. Particular collaborative robots are really particularly well suited for small and medium enterprises. And then I would say you absolutely can calculate cost of poor quality. So I think it's not just productivity gains that should go into the numbers, but also cost of poor quality that you can very clearly calculate and show the difference. I think another cost is also health cost for people. Number of sick days would be one, and if you look at some of the automation, the motivation actually come from people health that you need to improve and do something about it. So, and again, that's also a number that you can absolutely take into your consideration when you look at the return of investment for a specific solution.
Thank you. I would like to give the floor to Alexander Kamyshnikov, founder and co-owner of Quantum Space Group. We were discussing, how do you do? Microphone, please. Alexander Kamyshnikov, I understand it's an integrator for a bit different solutions, but there is an interesting experience of development with their own funds, and attempts to implement were not quite successful. Maybe you will tell us about the company. What do you offer and what did you encounter? Thank you very much for letting me take the floor. In fact, our journey to robotics has not been very long, taking into account our previous activities. Our company was specializing in banking automations, including self-service systems. We were for a long time been dealing with software for payment terminals, etc., for ATMs, and we're producing such devices. A major part of devices of the savings bank has the software of Sberbank's ATMs. Evolution of these devices if you know, it has been progressing on continuous complexity, money acceptance, money release, and the endless, infinite complexity. The thing is, the time frame for development of such devices, it's up to 7 or 10 years, even in the largest companies, because it's a very complex set of frameworks. And as we see these tortures, we see that there is a certain technological deadlock, that the company does not manage to create solutions to the new problems. But along came the revolution with the speed of calculation, which has become such that it made it possible to solve many tasks on the go, online, and industrial robots, as paradoxical as it may sound, they turned out to be capable of working not in the usual areas like machine building, painting, welding, but in a large number of operations of routine nature, which we have a lot around, in particular in banking sector. What are the tasks resolved in the bank? First of all, is cash banknotes calculation is stupid, routine, monotonous, very harmful job related to dust, is excellently resolved by industrial robots. In back offices, they have been implemented, not many of them. Now, in 6 cities of Russia, in Sberbank's units, such units work. For about a year, the pilot operations, for half of them we received very good feedback, and half they have been worse, and the process has been resolved poorly. The second area is the experience that can replace ATMs, and there's certain combined device for interaction. Alexander, I do apologize, maybe somewhat shorter. We have worked for a long time. Excuse me, please ask Mikhail to turn off his microphone, please. And then we started, thank you, started to implement with our colleagues that there is no training, there is no understanding on the part of the customer of the complexity of this issue. There is no understanding of the need for training and learning of the people. And it turns out that we managed to do with our colleagues, with the perfection of these mechanisms, it turned out that the environment is not ready yet. We were about 3 years ahead of the market in this respect. And there comes this breakthrough, or the gap where we need the technical need or the need on behalf of the space, not in terms of money. Money can be found in the market, but we need assistance in terms of moving the market, concentrating the effort and attention on this segment, which is very complex. The products, the devices are perfect. We need specialists for them, not only programmers, not only integrators, but the service, the maintenance is a very complex task. We were speaking about integration, but The life cycle of these systems is about 10 years, but any robotized cell is not just a robot. It's a whole lot of other equipment that has been manufactured on-site by integrators, etc. So the task of following up on this facility is very complex. Therefore, to ensure these services for the country, a comprehensive service maintenance is required. It's where we are going to appeal to assistance of our state in order to do a program like that. Thank you for your attention. We will happy to see you in our exhibition booth. Thank you. May we ask for a comment? I apologize for plugging in. All the time, with many market players that I spoke to, always seems a lot somewhat incorrect, radically incorrect. Why do you operate that you make the product that is not interesting for the market? If the market cannot use it, if the market has not specialists of such scale, if the state needs to train specialists to use your product, then why do you appeal to the state? Very often in robotics we say, we need specialists. Let's make a product together. I invite myself, which does not require specialists. State must not deal with teaching people work on your product. This is radically wrong. The state is not for that. We, with our taxes, create the state, and this is not the target of the state. This is our goal, to make product that does not cause complications to the customer. I think this is one of the issues in the Russian market, especially when the colleagues said, oh, there are no people who know how to use the robots. This is the wrong offer to the customer. Reveal needs facilities that work. Why then, for the part of those who produce solutions, appeal to the state? This is not the state's task. This is the task of ours. This is your goal as the manufacturer of this computer, is your goal. Why do you appeal to someone else who must teach people for your equipment? Maxim, we are quite unusual. We say that need a targeted activity. We're discussing issues why we have this special way when the entire world has been going in the usual way. We have lost the robotics that were there in the Soviet Union at a very good level. We conform to the global level, so we lost it because they had different challenges. But now we must catch up. We can catch up in different manners. We can start building competitive robots, systems. We must look for niches. You are looking for niches for yourself. You are looking for an uncommon niche. You are building products that are different from the main lines. You are looking for these options, but we need to train people. I do apologize. We need to train people. We need to teach people. We need to raise the culture. Thank you. Thank you. One question.
Excuse me. My name is Alexei Matulin. I have a trivial question. If, from the point of view of computers, what Maxim has said, I am almost sure that adaptive parametric programming for the units for Ravil will be made. I have no doubts about that. But my question is, I would address that question to Maxim probably and robotics producers. I see robots at all exhibitions which, make only this part of the arm. But these grips, which cannot grip different types of parts, how this problem can be addressed? And this is a question to Fanuc and Kuka. Universal grips, because the shape and the weight of parts or components is different. You were talking about technologies, because you have to handle different types of parts, different shapes. You need to change the arms or have an individual unique arm grip for each component. Who of the manufacturers would like to answer this question?
I can start. So as a robot manufacturer, we typically do not make the gripper ourselves. But I made the observation this year at the big automation fair Automatica in Munich that one of the biggest trend was an extended variety of grippers. So if we look at the global market, the need is recognized, and it's made to be used for any robot brand. So I think the need is recognized, and there's a huge market globally on solving that exact problem, both for cobots and traditional robots.
Thanks a lot. Anyone would like to say something? Yes.
Thank you. This is a very, very good question. And usually we change hand changer. But my feeling is that value is shifting from robot arm to the end effectors. So we, robot suppliers, should develop very flexible hand in the near future. Thank you.
Спасибо.
Thank you. Yaskava, would you like to add something, Bruno?
The same to say than colleagues from KUKA and Fanuc. So first of all, you're absolutely right. I mean, more brokers will be needed in the gripper. I think it's really in the focus. I think we need better sensoric, we need better textronic, and I think that's really been worked on. Much work to be done, and also including machine vision, because you might also want to see what you grip, not just feel what you grip. Right? But I think it's very much recognized, and everyone is working in it, and I think that will really largely extend the usability of robots in the future. Thank you.
Спасибо большое. Еще вопросы из аудитории?
Thanks a lot. Any more questions from the audience? Only please introduce yourself. Ilya Pavlov. My question is to all the speakers, probably, since we have such a representative group of manufacturers and users. I wanted to ask a question about one of the central topics from the integrators. Everyone believes that an integrator is more or less obvious thing. There is more practice in Russia and less globally, but may you, all of you, may give a definition of an integrator. Who is an integrator? What is the role of integrator for robotics, for digitalization of production? Can you give 1, 2, or 3 attributes to define an integrator? Thank you. Thank you for your question. Maybe, Ravil, you will be the first. How you see an integrator, ideal integrator for you? An integrator is a representative of unit production, not even a small batch, because as a rule, every project is unique, and we have to develop it from scratch, we may say. But this is a group of very highly qualified engineers and workers who are capable in real-time mode design or produce such solutions. Their task is not to install a robot, but to create an efficient robotics complex. Very briefly, I would describe it like this. Thanks a lot. Maxim, formerly you told me that you are not an integrator. Can you define an integrator? Integrator is a company, as I understand it, which knows how to install, to assemble a unit, adjust it, provide all the logistics, and finally produce a final solution which would satisfy the customer. I do not understand clearly. We may give lots of very general definitions of integrators because the integrators are different. They use different technologies. Some of them adjust the process lines. Some others are closer to the customer or closer to the manufacturer. It's a very big market. So it's just a company which may supply and program a robot. That's it. And now from the manufacturers, would you like?
Well, I would like to add, I think the most important role of an integrator is understanding the need or the problem that the end customer is facing, and being able to translate that into what components are needed and how should the solution be properly designed to solve that problem for the end customer. So the process knowledge to understand and translate into technology, that would be my definition.
Кто-либо еще из...
Anyone else on the side of manufacturers? No, thanks. In that case, I would like to ask a similar question about who is an integrator and what are the functions of an integrator. I would like Michael Ivanov to provide his comments on this from the point of view of the state, because we talked about the tasks for the development of robotics. A lot was said about the integrators, their role, localization. What is your vision of the role of an integrator? In fact, if we go a little bit beyond the boundaries of this discussion, of our discussion of robotics, in my understanding, bearing in mind that today the trend of transition from individual sectors of global economy, of leading countries, to the service model of the function. When you are selling machine hours, for instance, and not the machine itself, in this model, in which many experts believe that the future belongs to, is this model of a service provider and PC contractor. In different industries, the names are different. So these type of companies have the key role. In my understanding, if we go back to robotics, an integrator, largely speaking, is the source of growth of demand for robotics as machines itself, the unit itself, accompanied by the software. Today, we may put it that way, to be a front officer in the development of this business. This is the role of an integrator. And in that respect, we have a number of companies which today have an experience of operating in our market from the point of view of implementing such projects. I wanted very briefly to comment on what Ravil has said, why we do not have today very powerful integrators, because we are getting back again to the issue of what comes first, a hen or an egg. In that sense, probably it's very difficult for us to expect the experience of very quick explosive growth of powerful integrators unless we have a sufficiently long demand arm, which would stimulate the appearance of such companies in the market. Therefore, we as a state are quite ready to offer some tools in order to share the risks with the users. Those users, those customers about whom I'm talking today, even the program of soft financing, all these are the tools of risk sharing. An integrator today comes to Kamaz, for instance, and offers bonded financing and tries to reduce the risks, which probably the customer is concerned about. Global experience demonstrates that there are other tools related to industrial insurance, with creation of dedicated funds which would cover the possible losses which may be caused by the fact that the customer is using some new innovative equipment. And we are quite prepared in dialogue with the manufacturers and end users, offer and improve such mechanisms and implement them. And I liked very much the idea about the internship. Bruno has mentioned it, and this is a very temporary hiring and training, this stuff, because in terms of collaboration with individual countries, we do have projects like this today, and they are developing very actively. For instance, with Japan, for a long time, we've agreed and are working in accordance with an 8-point plan on acceleration of collaboration between Russia and Japan. And one of the points is the diversification of our relationship in industry. And one of the ways of implementing this plan is organization of internship of the Russian manufacturers, Russian employees of the Russian companies in Japan. We had 2 large internships like that. This involves hundreds of people. They concentrated around automotive production. Toyota was the hosting company. It explained what is Toyota, how their production is managed, what is the control of production processes. And I believe that if we here would voice this open invitation for our integrators and the companies, manufacturer companies where the robotics may be used in principle, all those who think about it, let us know, and we will organize another wave, another round of such programs, including the representatives of such companies. And we will hope that Yashava, for instance, would be able to help us in organizing this kind of internships, which is also very important. Thanks a lot. You have touched upon a very interesting question on education. I will take just 1 more minute of your time. We are open an engineering center in Kaliningrad. We traveled around 10 regions. We have analyzed information from 15 regions. Main key parameter for the selection of the platform is where they have competent staff. We decided to select Kaliningrad, hoping that the people would come there. We started analyzing universities. Now we are making a consortium of 6 universities, and we are grateful to the Ministry of Trade and Commerce. Initially, they have selected Kant University, around which we are building a consortium of 6 universities. 2 Kaliningrad universities and 2 universities from the regions with key competences, from Tomsk, for instance, and who are the strongest on international rating, strongest, Skoltech. And then we are also inviting a Czech university from Ostrava, because they are the bearers of a European requirements. This type of consortium, to my mind, is a very important story which would help to replicate the experience, and the Ministry of Industry and Commerce is a key player of that. And I wanted to wind up our panel with one more question, which I would ask from Michael Ivanov from the point of view of integration, digitalization, and robotics. Let me explain. Digitalization in many respects has become possible because the component base it becomes cheaper. The controllers for the transfer of data, collection of data, wireless transfer of data becomes cheaper. But at the same time, the automated solutions, the solutions which are built on remote diagnostics are not so well integrated. What should be the key factor to obtain the synergy from integration of robotics? Because please pay attention that here we have 4 manufacturers of robotics, and the integrators are all from robotics industry. At some point, there must occur this joining between the robots and other suppliers of automatization solutions. What is the key step to this? If we are talking about this merger between robot manufacturers and suppliers of other automation solutions, I believe that we may consider different situations depending on the scale of the project. If for instance, we are talking that we need to build a factory or turnkey production, then an integrator who will be involved in turnkey factory building must break down this complicated task into a kind of a pyramid. If we are talking about modern approaches, which should have digital solutions at every stage with controller centers, analysis, big data, and so on. And I believe that one of the tasks, including the tasks of our ministry, and we are developing this type of approaches, is the creation in Russia of this scale of integrators, contractors, and building the engineering industry, because future of demand belongs to them. Tomorrow, no one will buy just a machine. Already today, people do not do that. The high-tech products today, as such, is not demanded by the market. One of the topics today was commoditization of components. This may be considered, but commoditization of complicated solutions, including robotics complexes, maybe commoditization of services, integration services, technologies. This is the future of the industry, I believe. Thanks a lot. We are behind the time already. Thank you, all the participants. I believe it was very interesting, and I do hope that we'll meet again next year. Thank you.